are the DC and RWBY crossovers actually good? This is a question I have been trying to answer and give some sort of substantial answer to here online, because I am a big fan of RWBY, as all of you should probably know by now, and I do have a passing interest in DC stuff. I was a big fan of Arrow. I play the Injustice games. I like those. I like a lot of the cartoon shows for Justice League and stuff like that. And the Batman movies as well. I am a casual enjoyer of all things DC, and I want to try and convey my thoughts and feelings about the two different comic series. We got RWBY X Justice League, where the Justice League people enter Remnant and become part of the world of RWBY, and then we have DC/RWBY, where the four main RWBY girls go into the DC world and experience life there. And then from those loosely adapted, not really adapted properly, but the core concept is we have the two movies, Justice League X RWBY Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 1 and 2. And I have thoughts and feelings about these four main pieces of media, and I rambled on for about an hour just earlier today, going off my dot point list of everything I thought about them. But I'm going to do something a little bit different. I am going to instead subvert expectations and go the other way. I'm going to try and accurately convey my feelings about these four pieces of media for 1 minute on each one. So this is going to be a quicker video because of this, and I am literally just going to go for it. I'm going to keep my notes open. I have a timer next to me. Alright, so we are going to... my voice is breaking. We're going to start off with Justice League X RWBY. I think that's what it's called. I have the comic behind me. No, RWBY X Justice League. Then it's DC Cross RWBY. I'm stupid. RWBY X Justice League, where the Justice League people go in to the RWBY comic world. Alright, let's go. 3, 2, 1, let's go. So, the Justice League people enter the world of Remnant. They've actually always lived there, surprisingly. They're all teenagers, and the RWBY characters aren't really written like RWBY characters. They're written for a DC audience, so people get to know the RWBY characters better. The characters are all really flirtatious with each other, and it's really fucking cringe and weird, because you don't really see a lot of that in normal RWBY, especially like RWBY herself. Yang encourages her to flirt with Yang, but that's besides the point. Get away from that. I don't like the flirting, it's weird. The characters have always been there. The main plot's about Starro. He's the main villain, even though he's kind of weird. So it's made so the DC villains, the one main DC villain is taking on all of RWBY, and then the Grimm are kind of also there. Not really. There's a giant fight, a final fight. It's boring. There's some multiverse moments. It's whatever. Some of the characters get along with each other well. Weiss and Batman get along with each other well. Blang and Yang are fine, and RWBY is okay. But yeah, it kind of sucks. Whew, that was terrible. That was actually terrible. Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this one. I wasn't a big fan of RWBY X Justice League, the comic series. Yeah, it felt like the RWBY characters were written in a style that's not... They didn't feel like themselves naturally. It felt like they were written for a different audience. And literally the first page has Yang saying something like, "When I said I wanted to work on my tan, I didn't mean farmers." And it really came across as something that Yang wouldn't really say. Like, I couldn't imagine her saying shit like that. And, yeah, wasn't a big fan, but there you go. Alright, now in the same vein, we are now going to do the DC Cross RWBY comic, where the Team RWBY go into the DC world. 3, 2, 1, let's go. Alright, there's an opening battle between Batman and Team RWBY, where Batman deduces all of their abilities and techniques, because that's what he does. He's an investigator, and it's actually really, really cool. The writing is a lot better this time around compared to the first crossover comics. Team RWBY actually look really cool. The designs are all really unique and really, really cool this time around, unlike the movie, and I really liked it. The plot this time around is that the world of Remnant is actually like enveloping DC Earth world, and things are starting to take over. Like Grimm and semblances are starting to cross over, and it's actually really, really interesting. Joker fuses with the Knuckle-Larvae in a really cool looking fucking scene. They're talking about Salem and all that, and like Lex Luthor is really involved and ends up kind of fixing things and making things worse and exploring the multiverse, and it's actually really, really, really cool. And I really like the interesting bond here that they've made between like Salem bringing in the Grimm to try and take over another world and help other people and expand their power. And it's written a lot better this time around, and the ending is really cool because Batman turns evil for a bit. Boom! I should have said spoilers at the beginning, at the top of the episode. Ha! Too bad. Spoilers, if you didn't already know. Yeah, there you go. This comic was a lot more concise, well written, and I do appreciate DC Cross RWBY a lot more than the first comic. It actually, because of the world of Remnant and the rules of Remnant are crossing over into the DC world, they actually had, looks like the author actually had to do a bit more like in-depth research about RWBY, so it made a lot more sense this time around, and I was a bigger fan of this one. Okay, now let's moving on to the Justice League Cross RWBY Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 1 movie. In 3, 2, 1. Animation is really fluid. It's not really movie quality, but it's still pretty cool because it's based off of around the time of Volume 8, Volume 9. It makes a lot of sense. The characters are all like interesting, but it takes a while for them to all get introduced. There's a lot of people, but they immediately address the weirdness of the situation and the glitchy effects. And yeah, Jessica Cruz is adorable. Her and John get on really well. I like RWBY and Superman getting along. I like Weiss and Batman getting along. All very, very cool and interesting crossovers. I'm not a big fan of Wonder Woman with Yang and Blake. That's kind of, I don't know, that doesn't really fit for me as well. The Grimm are a lot more dangerous this time around because they're actually in a digital world, and that makes a bit more sense. I guess the Grimm haven't really been a problem before, but sure, that's fine. Yeah, everyone gets on really well. Ran, Yang, and Nora, Ran and Nora and Cyborg were a bit cringe though. That was the only part I didn't really like. Teenage Batman was a bit more emotional this time around, questioning and actually having abilities, and the ending fight with Kilgore was actually interesting, and it was pretty cool animated, but the ending fight was anticlimactic. Alright, I went on a bit long for that one, probably a second longer than I should have. Yeah, Kilgore being the main villain, I don't really know much about Kilgore. The ending fight, like, while it was cool, the animation was smooth for nearly everything except for like the motorbike, I guess. The motorbike seemed like a bit too still and smooth, way too much. And one other aspect I really like is I thought with these movies that like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman were going to be the main focus on the DC side of things, but they actually put a lot of attention on Green Lantern and the Flash, which I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, ending fight, while it was cool, the actual ending of it was a bit anticlimactic. And one thing I do have to point out is the music is rather lackluster because it's not the normal RWBY crew. They got someone else to do the music, and it's really uninspired and boring. But yeah, it is what it is. Alright, and lastly, we have the Justice League X RWBY Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 2 movie. Alright. 3, 2, 1. Alright, we're in the DC world, we're in the Gotham and whatnot, and it's actually really interesting because it takes place immediately after Part 1, except the world of Remnant and RWBY, that's actually been a few weeks' time. They're now in Vacuum World, by the way. It's really cool. It's post-Volume 9. Nice, we like that. MJF makes a cameo as Killer Croc. It's a bit weird. Yeah, Troy Baker Batman was cool. Everyone got along well. Everyone had their own time to shine. The animation was a little bit more janky this time around, I noticed. It was kind of weird. Team RWBY crossing over and they're all getting redesigns was kind of cool, but they don't really have their powers. Whatever, it is what it is. I did like just Team RWBY though, and Kilgore taking over people in the fights, and actually having arguments with Arthur Watts, who is digitally here. His consciousness is still around. Bit weird. Is this canon? I don't know. Weiss is a queen, but the only one of Team RWBY that didn't actually discover a new power, which kind of sucked. But that was still, it was fine. Ending fight was cool, going to different places, different people getting taken over, but the actual anticlimactic ending of Kilgore and Arthur Watts getting stuck. The time ran out again. Then I speak fast and then I lose my way really easily. Yes, the ending fight was cool. I got clothesline pegs in my pocket. I just felt, and I'm going to get them out. The ending fight, like, it was very similar to the first movie with pacing, and I did like it. And everyone got to expand on their relationships they established in Part 1. And it was fine, it was cool, but And there was some interesting moments, but the canonicity of it all brings into question a lot of things, with RWBY especially throwing herself purposely into danger post-Volume 9, and the exchange between her and Superman was pretty good. RWBY saying, heroes fall and I just want to get as much done before I do. And Superman retorting with, I make my parents proud by fighting for the things they died for and not trying to join them too soon. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And then RWBY and Yang during the final fight, there's one point where RWBY gets knocked down, and Yang's just like, no, I'm going to get you out of here. I don't want to lose you. And RWBY says, Yang, you have to trust me. I'm not Mom, and I'm not Raven. That is some sort of sisterly connection, and like something I wish was said a lot sooner in canon mainline RWBY. But Arthur Watts returning was also kind of cool, but it was a little bit wasted because the ending, I don't know why, but the ending of both the major last bouts was anticlimactic in Part 1 and Part 2. Like, Arthur Watts and Kilgore just got trapped in a digital box. And that was it. But, yeah, look, I'm glad these were straight to home video releases and like home releases, because I would not pay to watch either of these in cinema. Personally, I felt like they were fine, but it was like, you can tell these crossovers are here just to try and bolster RWBY and open up RWBY up to a new audience, like to DC fans, obviously. And you can tell that by the way they, in the comics and in the movies, the way they explain faunuses, the way they explain semblances, it's all really odd, the way they explain those things in the comics and the movies. So, and it's clear the reason they're doing it that way is to, like, give people who don't know anything about the world of RWBY more context. And, like, them just straight up saying, oh, faunus, you know, the animal-human hybrids? I don't think they've ever used that type of explanation before in RWBY. It's literally just faunus. Like, we know they're humans, like basically humans with animal traits, but they had to explicitly say that so the new audience would understand that, and it was weird. And semblances, the comics were especially bad for explaining what semblances are, because they literally had entire pages of like during the first fight, because literally the first few pages is Superman, Yang and RWBY at Patch, and Superman gets taken over by the Starro, whatever the fuck he's called, and Yang, literally while fighting this possessed Clark, explains what her semblance is. And it's like, you're explaining this to a possessed person. You don't know if they're going to retain what they're learning. And also, they're possessed. So maybe don't explain what your semblance is to the thing possessing them? I don't know. It was very odd and very weirdly written. That was the first comic set. The second comic set, as I said, was a lot better. The movies, they had good interactions. The voice acting was good all around, except for young Batman in Part 1. That was a little bit odd, I'll admit, like just to me. But the voice acting, and for Weiss is a queen. I love Weiss, one of my favorite characters. But Kara sometimes needs to take one or two extra shots with a few of her lines. There was like only like one line in each of the movies that I thought could have been redone, but the rest of it was fine, really good, and she was quite funny actually as well. Weiss, all the characters had their moments. I felt like all the characters in the movies had good moments to shine, except for Ren in Part 1. I feel like Ren did a lot of nothing apart from argue with Cyborg. That was odd. And that whole thing with, hey, we're adults that we got these teenage bodies now, how did this happen? And Cyborg kind of flirts with Nora a little bit. Very weird. All the flirting in the first comic set was fucking icky to me. Like, I didn't like the only time where it was subtle enough and made sense was literally when Blake and Yang first saw each other for the first time in ages, and one of them winks at the other one. That was the only time when I was like, okay, that's cute, that's nice. But like Yang encouraging RWBY to try and like flirt with Clark was very weird to me. I don't know. That's besides the point. This is, I just wanted to do a bit more of a concise breakdown. I literally talked for 50 minutes earlier. I feel like this was better and a little bit more comedic, I guess, with me rambling on. So, yeah. I would normally say something like, hey, leave your thoughts in the comments down below, but in all honesty, I am comfortable with the way, I am more affirmed with my belief of the comics and the movies, and unlike Volume 9, I'm not really looking for other opinions. I just want to try and explain to you my thoughts about these things. And if you want to take them and run with it, good on you. If this is sort of a review for everything for you, for the comics and the movies, sure, have it be like that. That's fine. If you want to take this as a review, go ahead. So, the RWBY X Justice League comic, not a fan. I think at the time the author didn't really understand a lot of RWBY as a whole, despite the fact it's literally Justice League people coming into the world of Remnant. I just thought it wasn't that good. 3 out of 10. Some panels looked alright, but a lot of unnecessary flirting to take up a lot of pages of the comic. Didn't really appreciate it, didn't really care for it. The DC Cross RWBY comic, that was a lot better, a lot more well written and tighter. They even reference the Team RWBY fairy tale influences at one point. They actually break it down kind of, and I thought that was kind of funny. 7 out of 10. They're definitely much better, in my opinion. Superheroes and Huntsmen Part 1. Ooh, that's a toughie. Probably 5 out of 10. Yeah, probably a 5 out of 10. I thought there were way too many characters, although all of them had something little to do. And although the animation was cool, the fights were alright, it was anticlimactic, it didn't really go many places, and yeah, I didn't really care for it that much. And and Part 2, I'll say 6 out of 10. Definitely a bit more uniform, and things were kind of a little bit different, and especially post Volume 9, where everyone, like RWBY especially, had a different drive. It felt a bit more well handled. There was a lot more talking in both of the movies than one would expect. I'm still weighing up whether what movie I liked better. Maybe Part 2 currently is just there because I've watched it more recently. It's hard to figure it out. But yeah, that's my thoughts and opinions with the RWBY DC crossovers. Are they good? They're fine. It's more supplemental material, and the movies are very debatable whether you want to take them as canon or not. I hope we see more of RWBY acting like this new type of RWBY that wants to get into danger on purpose to try and get as much done before she dies. That new take on RWBY, I feel, is very interesting, and I hope they continue to run with that in Volume 10 so we can expand more on that. And Weiss's Lost of Atlas as well. Can expand on that a bit more as well. But you know, everyone had their moments to shine, everyone was cool, the music was shit. And animation was only a little bit janky in Part 2. So yeah, there you go. That's my overall take on everything. I guess, yeah, I'm happy with my takes. I feel confident with my thoughts on these things. And yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you next time.